Are you a data analyst that doesn't want to make embarrassing mistakes? Misinterpreting results or coming to the wrong conclusion during your presentation to the CEO is basically career self-deletion. You don't want to be deleted, do you? You can stay in the game by becoming aware of these 5 cognitive biases, which will help you be more confident during presentations and more accurate than your analyses. The 5th one might even save your career. Confirmation bias. The first bias that data analysts need to be aware of is the confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is when you subconsciously look for evidence that confirms your own opinion. As a data analyst, at the start of a project, you'll probably have your own opinion or a hypothesis on what patterns will be seen in the data. In the most extreme case, you might be tempted to completely ignore data or patterns that contradict your personal opinion. For example, imagine a data analyst who hates ice cream and dislikes obesity is working for a frozen food distributor and makes a presentation to the ESG board showing that a higher volume of ice cream sales in the summer is somehow related to higher crime rates. This analyst is trying to nudge the distributor to make the ethical decision to reduce or eliminate the distribution of ice cream by showing increasing ice cream sales having a negative effect on society. He got too excited when finding a piece of information that supported his agenda and decided to present a false correlation. Just because he personally doesn't like a cold, creamy milk product or the sight of the obese. Are you team ice cream or team obesity? Tell us in the comments below. In reality, this correlation, not causation, is being weaponized for this analyst's personal agenda. A real professional would not do this. And you, of course, would consider yourself a professional, right? The data analyst's job is to present data to decision makers in a way that is easy to understand. It is not about nudging them to agree with your personal preconceived opinion. It is a disservice to omit information or patterns in order to support the case for your personal hypothesis. Of course, this can happen subconsciously, which is why it is important as a data analyst to keep objectivity at the front of your mind. Anchoring bias. The second bias data analysts need to know about is the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias is when during our decision-making process, we tend to put more importance on the first piece of information that we hear. A data analyst who is making a presentation can use this bias to their advantage when they either want to emphasize an important data value or concept, or when they want to be more persuasive. Say, for example, you are given multiple KPIs to create and present to the executives for them to decide which one to use. But the subject matter expert you're working with has put the most emphasis on one of the KPIs. The first thing you would do is discuss this KPI at the very start of your presentation. But talk about this KPI alone by itself without mentioning all the others. Those can be discussed later. According to this bias, the viewers of your presentation will assume the first KPI they were shown is the most important. AutomationBias. This third bias will probably be most relevant for the new generation of data analysts. The Xanalysts, or Gen Zers, who have decided to make a career in the field of data. With ChatGPT disrupting the traditional way data analysts used to work, this bias is definitely something even more experienced analysts should be aware of. The automation bias is when humans, you and me, tend to trust whatever a machine or computer does or recommends over what a human would recommend. If you ask ChatGPT to write some code on your behalf, you might just copy and paste it into your terminal without actually having an understanding of what functions are being used and the parameters being referenced. If you were to go to Stack Overflow or other forums, you'd be more skeptical of the recommended solutions and eventually force yourself to understand the details of different functions. Of course, you should use ChatGPT or other LLMs to help speed up your workflow. Just don't get into the habit of not understanding a code snippet and using it in your work. You wouldn't want to be embarrassed during the code review, or you have a dumb look on your face as you try to explain how your copy-pasted code works. If that happens to you, maybe consider asking ChatGPT what's the likelihood of you passing a performance improvement plan. Effort justification. Another bias is effort justification, also called the effort bias. This is where we assume that just because we put a high amount of effort into achieving an outcome, therefore the value of the outcome is high, even if objectively the outcome is not highly valuable. As a data analyst, you will, for the most part, be commanded to create dashboards around the whimsical specifications of indecisive stakeholders. The stakeholders come to you with the mock-up dashboard made in PowerPoint. You do the long, laborious grunt work of bringing their vision to life. From the perspective of someone quickly making a PowerPoint, there are no second thoughts to scrapping an idea and starting again from scratch. Meanwhile, you've just spent hours working with colleagues to get the data pipeline running, the data transforms, the KPIs calculated with the business logic, and the user interface adjusted to the stakeholders' ever-changing preferences. When working on an analytics project, it is important to remember not to take too much personal ownership of what you are working on. You might not like to hear it, but you are an interchangeable cog in the corporate wheel. Whatever dashboards or software you create on the job belong to the company. Even if it feels like you just dug a hole and immediately filled it with dirt again, be happy you got paid to work. You might spend months working on a dashboard, only for the decision makers to come back and say it is no longer needed due to a change in strategy from the higher-ups. Don't take it personally and accept that it is not your job to determine the priorities of the business or organization. Framing bias. The framing bias, or framing effect, is simply when people make decisions based on how information is presented to them. In the field of analytics, this is a subtool topic that anyone who makes data visualizations should be aware of. We know the classic examples of a time series graph having that y-axis start at a high number rather than at 0. This is done to make the trend look bigger than it actually is. Notice how if the y-axis started at 0, the trend would look much less significant. If data analysts avoid making these types of mistakes on visualizations, the stakeholders will have a better understanding of what is going on in their organization, leading to better informed decisions. Also, if anyone points out a framing bias from one of your visualizations during the presentation, at the very best, you will lose the trust and respect of your colleagues. And at worst, you'll get put on the PIP program.
Subscribe, like, and hit the notification button for more videos on how to stop your brain from making bad decisions.